Ladies und gentlemen, welcome to the pre-show. Hey, David Otness, how you doing over there in the chat room? Niall Parkinson, Ellery Roberts, Ellery Scotland Roberts, Scotland, Lynn. So let's see. Let's get our banners rolling. Let's get our brand going. Bada boom. Look at that. We're ready to roll. So everything's rolling. Let me get our stream. I got to get the stream going here in just a second. That's what we're talking about tonight. I'm going to talk all about you and all your stupid stuff.
Celebrities.
Yeah, that's it. Celebrity. I'm going to talk about your celebrity tonight. So.
Kim Kardashian, Ariana Grande, Dwayne Rock Johnson.
Nah.
Well, I'm going to stay here until you do.
Yeah, talk about my boyfriend.
Uncle Dave, how you doing? Oh, Rainey wants me to talk about her new boyfriend, or it's her old boyfriend, Dwayne The Rock Johnson.
Uncle Dave, when are you going to take me to Mongolian barbecue?
There you go, Dave. I agree. Blah, blah, de blah, blah tonight. Niall, you love it. You know you love it because there's such good messages for you in the meditations of Marcus Aurelius. It's good stuff in here.
I don't think this is a straw.
Who else is in here? Brianna! All your banners are down. They're all up. Thank you. Thank you, though. I got to stop and see Brianna the other day. That was nice. I was running errands.
Uncle Dave, I'm not a celebrity.
Sure you are.
No, I'm not.
Sure you are. You got about 2 minutes. Don't mess with my hair, please. So if I want to mess with my hair, I'll mess with my hair myself. So I want a t-shirt saying, Uncle Dave, when are you going to take me to Mongolian barbecue? I think that's a great t-shirt for this show. Do the Intrepid radio program t-shirts. You know, there are Intrepid radio program t-shirts, guys. If you didn't know it, here, let me do this. www.etsy.com/shop/son of a patriot. We haven't, it's in the scroll bar, but we haven't put it up for all. Could you move your hand, please? Thank you. And,
What else do we need on the list?
children are a treasure from the Lord. Keep telling yourself that. And it's that time. Oh. Too bad it's just soda pop, huh? So the Mongolian barbecue place needs to pay Ellery for promotions. Yeah, I believe you're right, Sarah.
Why?
Because we keep mentioning them. It's like free advertising. Rainey, you got a minute and a half. You got a minute to come over and say hi. Less than a minute now. Make it quick.
Last time we had less than a minute and a half, I got pregnant.
Last time we she said last time we had less than a minute and a half, she got pregnant. So there she is. Get out of the way. There she is, my beautiful bride. There, child's out of the picture. That's all. Just wanted you to come and say
Have
hi.
a fun show.
I will. Have fun shopping.
I will.
Go to the grocery store. See ya. We got to go live right now. Bye. Go. Quiet.
Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent talk.
Are you looking for a really awesome and amazing graphic designer? How about an illustrator or a photographer? This is Rainey Roberts, and I wanted to tell you how you can get my designer, illustrator husband, Scotty Roberts, to work for you on your project. Do you have an awesome self-published book but no cover, or even worse, a cover that really sucks? Do you need a kick-ass logo for your company or some f***ing awesome graphic designs for your ads or website? Then get in touch with my husband for the best f***ing awesome kick-ass design and illustration. He knows his stuff, and he's been at this for more years than I've been alive. Go to ScottAllenRoberts.com. That's Scott with 2 T's, ALANROBERTS.com to take a look at his online portfolio of work, or call 651-468-8115. Now go out and kick some ass with some kick-ass graphic design.
Hire my dad, so he can take me to Disneyland.
You're listening to the Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent talk.
My sound's off. I see Brianna calling. Thank you, Brianna. See, it's just all this stuff. I still do it. I still forget to port up the mic. Got it, Brianna. Thank you for calling. Hey, I'm going to put you on speaker. Say hi to everybody.
Your mic is muted.
I know. I unmuted it.
Hello.
So, hello. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show. Thanks, Bree.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right. I'll talk to you soon. See, Brianna Learman. There she is. All right. Okay. There you go. At least it wasn't like 10 minutes worth of talking. It was only a couple of minutes. So welcome to the program. I'm your host, Scotty Roberts. I wish I wouldn't do that. I wish there was a way. I got a Post-it note. I got everything just to reach over and turn up that mic. And the only reason it's turned down is even though it's playing my intro, there's something about the software that hijacks the whole broadcast and puts it out to the radio station and all the different places where we broadcast the stream that will still pick up the mic even though the sound is playing for the intro. So I always have to port the mic down. And then I got to remember to physically bring it back up. So I'm sorry, but I make no apologies. So thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. And I was just going to say, we've got, you can go over to the radio station to hear the show in its audio format. You all know this if you're a regular listener over at odysseyradio.com. That's ODYSY radio.com. And you can see the video simulcast of this show in 4 different places. There would be 3 of them on YouTube, one or on Facebook, one of them here on YouTube, my YouTube page. So everybody, thanks. Yeah, there's a few seconds delay. We got about 30-second delay from the broadcast software to the live streams. So if you're watching and you're watching live, you're seeing the light cast from me 30 seconds ago. It's kind of like being a billion light years away, except I'm only like 0.000010 light years away. So I'm right here. So welcome everybody over in the chat room. Thanks for being here. Thanks for coming in, even though we're revisiting the meditations of Marcus Aurelius. Now, I know you all love this stuff. There's great material to pull out of these meditations. And tonight we're starting book 5 of his meditations. And I think you're really going to enjoy some of the things he has to say, because even though, we look at old texts like the Bible, the Old Testament, the New Testament, we look at the Quran, we look at the Talmud and the Torah. We look at all these things and we say these are ancient books that have lasted for thousands of years. Well, I think so with Marcus Aurelius and the things that he writes. These are, remember, the meditations, not named by him, were just a compilation of all of his memoirs, his notes to himself, like his personal journal to himself that he knew people would see, but at the same time, he's writing to himself. And they originally called these To Himself. Was the original title when they first compiled them centuries ago. And so now we've got these things 2,000 years later. So Sarah Yusuf says she likes looking at old magazines when she's in the doctor's office. It's kind of the same thing as that. So, I see Ruben Fasthorse is sitting in our chat room. Unannounced. Let me bring you in for a couple of minutes, Ruben. Hey, brother. How you doing?
Doe. Can you hear me?
I can. I have to turn my sound up ever so slightly because I don't have a headset on. If I turn the sound up too much, it will feed into my mic and give us feedback.
Is this better?
No, you're good. It's on my end.
No, I'm just very curious about Marcus Aurelius. I grew up very Catholic.
Yeah.
And I understand.
I don't know that he was Catholic. Hang on, folks. I'm going to turn my computer because I'm going to plug in.
Don't hold it against me.
So we can
Don't
listen to Ruben a little better. Hang on. There we go. Now
don't hold it against me. I was just curious about, your take on the Pope coming to Canada. And I'm going to go to Carlisle Indian School where they buried a lot of the Native American children with the Catholic Church. And that's a hard subject, and I'm not trying to turn it that way. I'm just saying that it's a good faith. It taught me a lot. Marcus Aurelius, I studied under the Jesuits, and I understood and learned and lived for 2 years at junior in high school and senior in high school among the Marist brothers, little brothers of Mary.
Sure.
So that was really powerful in my way, and I'm Native American. So the Catholic Church, the Anglican Church, the Christian way is not totally terrible bad. They just didn't do things right, like so many other people.
Well, if you're talking all the way back to Marcus Aurelius, Catholic Church didn't really exist when he was alive and when he was the Emperor of Rome. It was still yet another 50 years before you started seeing the beginnings and the rudiments of the Catholic Church forming. They were the literalist Orthodox Church, and they fought against the mystics. They fought against the Gnostics. They eventually won out by the time you hit the time of Constantine, which was in the 300s. So this is about 150 years before the time of Constantine, the emperor, who declared himself the first pope of the Catholic Church. So, Niall Parkinson, I put his quote up. He says, you know how I feel about this, Marcus Aurelius. Self-indulgent drivel over too many goblets of wine. Maybe. Was he drunk when he wrote the whole book? I don't know. Was he drunk at all? Was he much of a drinker? How do we know?
Scotty,
I understand the sentiment, but we don't know that about him.
Scotty, what about the Knights Templar? The Knights Templar,
totally different thing. Yeah. What's your question about them?
the question about that was what was considered the chalice, according to Dan Brown in the Da Vinci Code.
You're opening up a whole can of worms here, which we should do. Maybe we should do some shows on that and talking about the interpretations of that. I did write about that in my book on the reptilians, the secret history of the reptilians. And it was really looking into the mythos that existed over the centuries. And I got pretty deep into talking in one section of the book, talking about the Merovingians and that rise of that. I talked about the chalice, the Holy Grail, things like that. There's some good books out there. Holy Blood, Holy Grail. I don't know if a lot of that stuff has been debunked over the years, but there's a lot of controversy over it. But I think we should hit that topic at some time. It's a very good topic, but doesn't link into Marcus Aurelius at all. I don't think I've seen anything associated with Marcus Aurelius where he speaks about any of those church relics, because he was a Stoic. He was firmly rooted in Roman religion, if you will. He talks about God and so on, and sometimes you get that hint of influence from the Christian church that was rising, but many times in his meditations he talks about the gods, plural, and honoring the gods and the gods seeing you and things like that. So,
well, I just wanted to ask you, what makes you a believer in that sense of Christianity? Because I'm not Christian,
right?
I grew up Catholic.
I am. But you put me on the spot with that, because I've said many times over that my Christian faith is something I walked away from a long time ago. That doesn't mean, as I've said a million times, and all my listeners, you'll recognize me having said this before, I haven't thrown out the baby with the bathwater. But there are certainly things that I have serious questions about from a historical, research point of view, and so on. And so I don't know where to plug Jesus in. Is Jesus... I just heard, who the hell was I listening to that was talking about how they honor Jesus and they see him as, it was a very conservative talk show host for the last 4 decades, Dennis Prager. He's Jewish, and he was saying, I believe in Jesus. I believe he may have been the Messiah, but I don't believe he was the Son of God. I believed in and he wasn't doing a treatise on it. He just said, I don't believe he was the Son of God. He says, which is where I differ from Christianity as a Jew. And so I don't know where I fall on that issue anymore, mostly because I'm a bit in stasis about it, because I've determined that I don't accept everything I was taught once before. It's just another denominational religion that does the same things every other religion does, except they insist that anything you believe is wrong. And so I had, and I'm speaking in glaring generalities. So I took all of that stuff and I pushed it aside a bit and said, okay, I am a staunch, faithful agnostic. Meaning, what is agnostic? Knowledge. I have no knowledge that is for certain. It just means the more shit I know, the more I realize I don't know shit. And so that's where my stand is on that. I have a lot of respect for Jesus. I don't dismiss the possibility that he is the Son of God, but I don't have that proof. And as I've said many times, there are reasons I believe that way. There are reasons. We had a great conversation. Was it last night or Friday night where we talked about free will in the after show in the captain's cabin? So, Rapid Dog, I see you there in the chat room. You asked if I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm okay. Don't try this at home. It's fake blood.
Scotty, it's right in saying the same thing. My girlfriend is Jewish here in New York, and she believes the same thing, that Jesus was not the Son of God. as a Lakota Native American, we don't believe the same thing.
Sure.
He was a medicine man. He was powerful.
But of course, on the reservations, you were almost forced to be Catholic.
Forced. Indeed. Indeed. You're right. And so she believes the same thing, where he was a prophet, a psychic, a shaman, but he was not the son of God that we know to be the Catholic Church has made to be. And I was a strong Catholic myself. I taught altar boys and would sneak the holy wine before it became holy wine.
Now, if you haven't watched it, we've talked about this show before. Go to Hulu and you gotta watch Reservation Dogs. It's about a bunch of teens living on the reservation in modern day and the trouble they get into and all that. And one of the main characters, a teenager, has his spirit guide appears to him. And he said, he was talking, and he talks like this. He says, and I was killed at the Battle of the Little Bighorn. No, it wasn't anything really fancy. He says, my horse tripped in a gopher hole and rolled over on me. But he's kind of funny. He's a comedic, but he's his spirit guide, and he delivers good messages to him. And he appears to this kid when he's in the Catholic Church in town. He talks to him and spreads stuff, and he turns around at one point, all that build up to say this. He's dressed in 19th century, the way you would dress when you did your shows. He was in that traditional dress, and he turned, and there's a statue of Jesus there like this, with the heart. And he goes, "Hoa, white Jesus." And then it cuts away. So, "Hoa, white Jesus." So,
and that's, I never want to be, Paul Servino just passed. He was 84, and he was in
lots of stuff.
Yeah, he was in Goodfellas and so many others, and he was from Brooklyn, and I'm just north of New York, and he was typecast as a Italiano gangster or policeman or something. And so I don't want to be like Wes Studi in the sense of, or Michael Gray Eyes and just being an Indian, because I look like an Indian. So long story short.
How come you look so much like an Indian?
So maybe I should, I'll make millions or whatever.
You should. There's an old guy. Now, I'm making no comparison to you when I say this. There's a guy in that show, Reservation Dogs. He's an older fellow, probably in his early 70s, heavy set. You've seen him in the movies for years. He's Native American, and he plays Uncle Brownie on the show. He's, on the reservation. He just lives on the reservation, and he's a big pothead, and he sells pot and smokes pot. And he's poor, lives out in his own place out on the edge of the reservation, and a great character actor. You'll know him if you see him. Look up Uncle Brownie from Reservation Dogs. You're right, Matthew Sainsbury. That is Reuben's true roots. He was. I asked. I think there's a little tiny bit of, not language, but what do you call when we're speaking language and we speak in sarcasm or different, because of the very slight cultural barrier between Matthew and I. Sometimes he listens to things isn't taking me seriously. Reservoir Dogs. I think I called it Reservation Dogs. Sorry, Rapid Dog. So,
I think it's
Reservoir Dogs. No, Reservoir Dogs is the movie with Harvey Keitel that came out like 25 years ago. Reservation Dogs is the series on Hulu about the kids growing up on the reservation.
No, you're right.
It's a current series. Second season starts in a week.
Hulu puts it on, so yeah.
Hulu. Great series, and it's fun. Go look up Spirit. They just call him Spirit. Go on to, I think, YouTube, and you can watch the Spirit Guide. speaking to the teenage kid. It's a hilarious stuff, but at the same time, in the midst of all the comedy that is in that and in his presentation as his spirit guide, he says to the kid, the kid's a troublemaker, and he says, is this what you want? You've got to stop and ask yourself, what have I done for my people? And he makes a good point of that. And he says, so anyway, I got to go. Oh, and he does his thing. And, I just have to tell you, there's a point where he's talking to the kid for the first time. He goes, yeah, I was a warrior in life. And he looks at him and he goes, ah! Like then the kid jumps. He goes, I'm just fucking with you. So anyway, so I don't know if I can say the F word on radio, but I just did. So hopefully it gets beeped. So in time.
It's fine. It's fine.
So, anyway.
It's an emphasis, so it's good. It's your show. It's your dance.
Kinda. It's everyone's show. My show, it's your show too. Mikasa suyukasa. How are they? How do you say that in Italian? Hey, it's all our show. Ragazzi. So, let's see. Scotty's on a roll.
I want to hear other people talk about what they're going to say, but
yeah. No, well, it's full. Can you see the chat room? All kinds of talk in the chat room.
You and that I see me, and that's about it. But I really want to
sometimes do this. I throw up posts. There's one from Dave Potter, Uncle Dave. Niall, it's my belief that their mission was altered by themselves as they were bivouacked at the temple. I believe that they found items or knowledge had changed their beliefs. I think Dave is right on that. Of course, Dave's a little closer to that than I am, being the 77th degree Mason that he is, or whatever he is. So Dave knows all these things. Dave knows all.
Dave, I was just going to say, Dave, just a shout out to Dave that I was invited at Grand Portage this weekend for Jimmy Kimball, who passed away out of Iowa. And I think Dave knows Jimmy Kimball and Barbara Wallace Hughes. We're all reenactors. And just to saying to Dave that there are those among us that are rare. Hey, Neil Parkinson. We are all rare in the sense of we're called to do what we're doing. And I never would have met Scotty had he not approached me to become a Mohawk Scout. And I never knew what the hell most Mohawk Scout should be like.
Well, we wanted to shave his head, but he wouldn't let us. So come on, get into your role, Ruben.
There you go. And the rest of the guys, and they put me in a kilt. I say that all the time, and I still wear a kilt today when it's hot. And it's the best thing. It's the best thing. It's this whole what I want to call it. What Jimmy Kimmel brought, they're doing a giveaway. They're doing a Native American.
Right.
And I gave him the name Kichaga Wichasha.
Kichaga Wukasha. I can't even say it.
Which means the man, he was a tinsmith. And so he makes for everybody. He makes things. He would make stuff. And Scotty's, people don't know this, but I'm going to say it. Scotty's name is Wakatakia. Wakatakia is above. Ableza. Iukcha. Actually, Iukcha. Scotty's Indian Native American Lakota name is he thinks above all of us.
And I mispronounce that every time I try to say it.
Wakatakia, which is above. Waka Dakia. Yukcha. He thinks
Wagakia
above
Yokcha.
us. And I think that's what he is. And that's what
Not
he
Dumb
does.
Bear. It's not Dumb Bear.
It's not crazy.
When Ruben first told me that, he says, I'm going to name you when I adopt you into my family. I'm going to name you Wagachi, and I can't say it, Wagachia Itachia. Wagachia.
Dakia.
There it is. What Ruben said. I said, that doesn't mean like the bear's shitting in the woods, does it? He laughed. So.
Hardly. You're shitting in her mind, maybe. That's about it.
Yes. Niall Parkinson says, I promised you this. We will speak of the Knights Templar at some stage.
Hey, Neil. Good to see you. From
Niall over in Ireland.
Ireland.
I'm going to come to Ireland and visit you one of these days, Niall.
Oh, I'd love to go to
I just
Ireland.
want to get over there. I think we should put together a tour for our listeners and announce it several months to almost a year out so people have a chance to plan for it and save for it and go over. I'd love to take everybody over to Scotland and Ireland and do a tour the way John Ward and I did the Egyptian tour a few years ago. So we'll get that going so everybody can come. I want to make that a workable thing for everyone.
Sounds good.
Scotty, one who runs with sticky hands, says Dave Potter. I'm not sure what that reference is, but speaking of hands, I sliced my finger open this morning. You can't even see the Band-Aid. Here, look, see my Band-Aid? It's right there. But
Can I hear that? You want me to turn it up?
Yeah, I can turn it around too. And that's a Band-Aid I'm showing y'all. Anyway, this morning, just freaky thing. I'm out in the garage, and there was, those old antique, old ashtrays. They're square, and they're kind of rounded out, and they got the pointy corners on them. Well, there was one sitting stacked up on top of the file cabinet, and I was going to move it, and I reached it, and it slipped out of my hands, and I fumbled. It bounced off the file cabinet, back into my hand, and down on the floor. It didn't shatter, but it sliced open my finger. It was just the freakiest. I thought, how did that slice my finger? And I'm looking at it. It's not bleeding. You could peel the skin back, and you're like, whoa, God. I'm seeing like ligaments and bones. That's pretty wild. And then it went and then started bleeding. So I just took duct tape, and I duct taped it out in the garage so it would stop bleeding, and I could finish my chore. But anyway, so I don't know why that came up. Sticky fingers. So my fingers were not sticky this morning, Dave Potter. All right, Ruben, I'm going to get into, if you want to sit there with me through this, I'm going to get into some of the some things from Marcus Aurelius, and I want to get your take on it. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome. You are probably most familiar with him if you're not a historian, probably most familiar with him from watching the movie Gladiator. He was the Richard Harris character who played Marcus Aurelius the Emperor, who was murdered by his son Commodus in the movie. And which they still aren't sure if that actually happened or not. But there's suspicion. Anyway, this is the Emperor. And these were all the notes and things he wrote to himself. Things that were compiled later as they gathered together the writings of Marcus Aurelius. He was a Stoic by philosophy, and he was a philosopher. They called him the Philosopher King, the Emperor of Rome. And so we've been digging into, from time to time, we jump back into these because I want to go through the whole book of the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius. And so we're up to book 5. And there's no, he doesn't write flowery paragraphs to go, now I'm sitting on the bank of the Rhine and I'm going to write to you. He doesn't say anything. It's just jotting down his stuff. And he says this. It starts, the first section of book 5 says, at dawn. Now remember, he's writing to himself. He's speaking to himself. Picture yourself in this. At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work as a human being. What do I have to complain of if I'm going to do what I was born to do? The things I was brought into the world to do? Or is this what I was created for? To huddle under the blankets and stay warm? But it's nicer here. So you were born to feel nice, quote unquote, instead of doing things and experiencing them? Don't you see the plants, the birds, the ants and spiders and the bees going about their individual tasks, putting the world in order as best they can? And you're not willing to do your job as a human being? Why aren't you running to do what your nature demands? But we have to sleep sometime. Agreed. But nature set a limit on that, as it did on eating and drinking, and you're over the limit. You've had more than enough of that, but not of working. There you're still below your quota. You don't love yourself enough. Or you'd love your nature to, or you love your nature to, T-O-O also, and what it demands of you. People who love what they do wear themselves down doing it. And they even forget to wash or eat or take care of themselves sometimes. Do you have less respect for your own nature than the engraver does for engraving? The dancer for the dance? The miser for the money? Or the social climber for status? When they're really possessed by what they do, they'd rather stop eating and sleeping than give up practicing their arts. Is helping others less valuable to you? Not worth your effort? And that's where he ends that section. So, my take on this, he's saying, you're given things to do in life. Ruben, I know you very well, and I know that there are times where you're just like, I'm tired, I'm done, I'm just going to take the next 6 months off. And I get that way sometimes too. There's sometimes I'm just fatigued and exhausted and overrun, and I just want to go back to sleep. And
I will say this, Scotty,
yes.
just before I forget, what demands is our humanity, in the sense of what Marcus Aurelius is saying is what Chief Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse and all Gaul, not just Lakota, but other tribes too, they said the same thing. Is what demands is for you to, we can all lay in bed. Yeah, we can just lay there and take it. But we're called, we're demanded to get up and make our way to become the men we become, whether it's in fighting, as a Roman, as a Celtic, as a Lakota, we fight to protect and endure and give our lives. That's the Klingon way, which they got from us. It's a good day to die.
Yes.
So we have to get up and we go forth.
Right.
And so I totally get it. I understand.
And Niles says, I doubt he had to worry about getting out of bed for any reason. Maybe he didn't have to worry about it, but Niall, you're degrading the character of the man. I don't know if you have a reason for doing that, but did the man have integrity? Did he have character? Would you uphold him as a person out of history that had character? Maybe he didn't have a reason to get out of bed because everybody would do everything for him, but he'd be quickly assassinated in the time in Rome he lived in if he didn't do his job. And he's just saying, all he's acknowledging, I think, with this, Niall and everybody else, is that we all have stuff to do. We all have things we've been given to do. I think I look at you, Niall, and I say, you're an artist. It would be wrong of you to not express yourself in your art. Now, expression of your art comes from your soul. It's got to come when the muse speaks. There's times when the muse doesn't speak and it's difficult to create. I've been there. And I'm sure you experienced some of that. But this is what you were meant to do. And I think what Marcus Aurelius was alluding to is that there's things that by nature are yours to do, the work to do. And if you sleep your way through it, you're not going to accomplish that. What is it good for you to do? And I would think somebody who is as accomplished and wonderful an artist as Niall, these are the things that drive him. And I don't know what else drives you, Niall. I don't know if you write. I don't know exactly what you do, but I've seen your art for a long time. And I appreciate your art. Go ahead.
I will say this. I will say what Niall is saying is that from a Lakota perspective, Native American perspective, if you're not true to your art, Scotty, and you're saying the same thing, if you're not true to your art, singing, dancing, costume, language, all these things, if you're not true to it, if you're not, okay, those things bring you to a spiritual point, a consciousness that is spiritual. You don't have to be religious. It's just those things, because the drawing and the costume and the dance and the song and the sharing all bring you to that point where you're Irish, I'm Lakota, you're Scottish, you're American. It doesn't matter. It just brings us together. And so we can stand and look at a piece of art and try to understand it and take our time absorbing it, observing it, and experiencing, as Sarah's saying, living and experiencing life is a part of growth of human purpose. That's it. It's just taking the time to slow down, shut the fuck up.
Right.
And just watch, observe. Mm-hmm. Look at an elk when it eats. Look at an elk or a buffalo or a wolf or nature, because the old people say the more you look out there, you look in here.
Yeah.
And that's the consciousness. And all these things bring our consciousness to a level that is spiritual. And we forget that. The old people, Lakota people, I'll say this and close it, shut up. The old people say, Ihanik Gelha, Lakota ki naha, Wamakashka ki he woglakapsa. Long ago, when the humans would speak to the animals and the animals would speak to us. But we don't do that anymore. Why? Because we think we're above them. We think we're not in the web of life, the circle of life. We think we're above it. And so we make oil, we make gasoline, we make all this stuff, and we go outside that circle of nature when we should be in that nature circle and live like the Irish, like the Celts, like the Scottish, like the Lakota, and we live with nature. We didn't have gasoline, we didn't have diesel, we didn't have all these things.
And as funny as it seems, and as off a reference as it seems, I remember something that flashed in my mind when you were talking. The old Rex Harrison Dr. Dolittle that was made in the 60s, a musical. And I remember he's talking to his parrot, Polynesia. And he says, oh, to talk to the animals, learn their languages. I'd even get an animal degree. I'd study elephant and eagle, buffalo and beagle, alligator, guinea pig, and flea. I would converse in polar bear, quite. And Pekingese would be extremely good. If I were asked to sing in hippopotamus, I'd say, why not, miss, and would. This all just popped into my mind from when I was like 7 years old. And he ends his song and he says, and just think of it, Polynesia, they could talk to me. And so a funny, goofy reference to what you're talking about. But how much do we commune with nature? How much do we commune with what's around us? Is that frowned upon? Does our religion frown upon? I was in a denomination that frowned upon that. Oh, you don't talk to the old gods. You don't talk to nature. You don't do any of that. That's not what we were taught to do. And yet I look at that and I say, do I do enough of that? I'm stuck in my, not even stuck, I'm voluntarily stuck in my house most of the time, most every day of the year, because I'm working. I work right here at this desk. And when I get out, it's like, oh, the sun, it burns us. But because I don't get out that much. But it's not that I don't want to. I'm stuck here doing my thing. And maybe there are times we get so busy in doing that we miss living. And I think that's what you're hitting on there. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, Lakota way is we never kill a spider. We call her little sister. Little sister, she's here.
Isn't Etope the spider? Wasn't he?
Tell me. And I put her on my hand, and she never bites me. I just carry her outside and put her down. And, and I'm happy because in Lakota way, they're very sacred. They're the trickster. They can be a spider and they can be a coyote. And there's no concept of hell or a devil.
Or the devil. Now, I said Tope, and you said, how do you pronounce that?
Celtic. I think it's the same thing. Paganistic. Pagan is a word in Roman for country dweller. That's all it is. Heathen is of the hearth. So all these terms that they gave to us were from the Christian aspect. And so when I never kill a spider, and if we have to kill a spider, Scotty, yeah, we have to say a prayer. We say, Wankia Docte. The thunders are killing you, and then we kill them. But we have no reason to do that. We pick them up in the hand, even if they bite us. It's going to hurt, but they're safe. And then we take them outside, and that's a little sister. Tunkshi Jikala, little sister. Here, little sister, go outside. Go outside. And that's our connection with nature. And it should be humanistic. All humans should have a recognition of the leaves changing, the birds flying, the squirrels, a deer passing, bears, wolves, coyotes, everything. And we've forgotten that. And we need to acknowledge that and lower ourselves down. Be humble to where we can recognize that. That is being Native American. And you are a Native American. You're born in this country. Yeah. You live in this country. You're going to die in this country. And so know this country. I'm done.
I'm done. Yeah, that's I've always said, and I just talked about this the other day. I said, I wrote once, I'll never kill a cricket. Crickets were and when I wrote, I was writing a book, and that disappeared out of my files years ago. But I opened it up with talking about the crickets sing to me, and so many times lulled to sleep as a child, listening to them through the open window in my bedroom. And I've never known a cricket to do anything other than make beautiful music, and on a natural level. And I said, I'll never kill a cricket. I see a cricket now. My kids will, oh, Dad, step on it. It's in the ground. I go, no, don't step on it. Let it get up back outside. It's just a cricket. And so that's just a thing of mine. Not for the same reasons I think that you do, but undefined reasons that are similar to yours.
I think, and the Chinese say the cricket is a fortune of good luck. The cricket. So you never kill Chinese believe crickets you don't kill.
Right.
And I used to teach my children, Ash and Arwen, Callan and Arwen, my kids, when you would see the lightning bugs, I would say they're fairy people. But you see them close, they turn into bugs.
That's it.
Really fairies, and they light up, and they fly. And so my children believe that they're
when we were, and I've told this story, folks, if you've heard it, indulge me, but when we were out in New York at Fort Ticonderoga with the regiment, this is 2001, doing historical reenacting at the fort there. And we walked out in the woods about 10 o'clock at night along the old ramparts that were built up, that the French had built up when the British Army and the Scots were all attacking them at the fort, and they're still there. It's just all the forest has grown back up over it. And you can walk along these mounds, these earthworks, and go back into the woods. And we went to the spot where it made a 90-degree turn and went downhill through the woods down to the lake, downhill. And we were told by the guide, he said, this is the spot where the 42nd Royal Highlanders, who we were portraying, stormed these walls and these ramparts back in 1750s. And there were 1,200 of them killed in about an hour and a half time worth of fighting here. And but they kept charging. And so this field out here, and it wasn't a field anymore, it's all trees. He said this was a leveled field because they built this fort. And he said, they don't even allow you to dig out here. You can't put a spoon in the ground out here lest you could hit remains. And so we stood there in the dark, and it wasn't pitch black. We could still see. We had a couple of lanterns with us because we were at a period 18th century reenacting event. But you even extinguished the lanterns. You could still see. It was 10:30 at night. That glow that comes from the sky, and you could see the silhouettes of the trees. And we did a moment of silence. Our bagpiper played a song, and we said the soldier's prayer. And after we did that, we had the moment of silence, and we stood all lined up along this, about a dozen of us, looking into the dark of the woods. And as we finished the bagpipe and the prayer, out in the woods rose all the will-o-wisp, the fireflies. They just, as if on cue, hundreds, if not thousands of, and they came and they surrounded us. I'm getting chills going down my arms and my back.
That's medicine.
Thinking about this. And so we walked it back out and went to the big common graves site where the French general Montcalm had buried French and British soldiers all together and erected a big wooden red cross to mark it. And he was criticized by some of his men, and he said, none of that. He says, they all fought, they all died bravely, we're burying them all together. And as we went out there and stood at the site of now a recreation of where that cross on the site, the fireflies all came and followed us and just slowly swirled around us. And the feeling there was palpable of, yes, they're fireflies, but when they're out in the woods, they're the souls of all the fallen 42nd. That's what we all felt at that moment.
That totally makes sense, because I would teach my children that they are the fairies, the souls.
Yes.
But when you get close, they turn into bugs. So that's a human manifestation or acknowledgement of what we can perceive and understand. Otherwise,
thank you for that, Chuck Hendrickson, by the way. I've put his post up. Ruben, sit still for a minute. folks over listening on the radio, we've got to part ways with you right now. So here's what we're going to do. In about 10 seconds, we're going out, and stick around in the chat room, and you can stay around for the Captain's Cabin, which comes on immediately following the show. So right now, I'm just going to say, all of you out in Radio Land, live long and prosper.
It's a good day to...
Join us every weeknight at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, 10 p.m. Eastern. The Intrepid Radio Program, a Scotty Roberts Productions broadcast.
All right. Welcome back, folks. This is the Captain's Cabin. This is the after show, the afterglow, the place where we bask in what we just did over the last hour on the radio show. And it's a place where you can call in, too. Chuck Hendrickson, if you are still listening out there, my friend, call in. I would love to hear your story. Here is the, let me post it in here. This is the link that you can go to. Sorry, I'm trying to unplug this. We just went off air at the over at the radio station, so the link dropped. So we're free and clear. But Chuck, if you're around, hit that link and come on in here. It's camera, it's audio. You can come in with just audio if you want. If you're still around, I would love to hear your story about Gettysburg. But many of the people you know, Chuck, if you're still there, that and Dave, Uncle Dave Potter knows, were there with us. We had Eric Nelson was with us, Larry Frazier. We had who was our bagpiper. We had, I believe, I want to say Ryan Gale was there, but I'm not positive. I'd have to look back at photos. We had Bill Locken and Laura Locken. And so many of the people that you knew were there with us, experiencing that at Ticonderoga. And I have a firm belief. You might say I'm wacky for thinking this. Oh, you don't have any way to prove that. You can't qualify or quantify that, Scotty. I have a firm belief. Like Rubens said, when they would see the fireflies and they'd talk to their children, they would say the firefly up close, he becomes a firefly. But when he's in the woods and you see him flying at night, it's the fae or the fairy folk or the elementals or spirits. And I firmly believe when we were there on those ramparts and we were doing honor to the men who had fallen there 250 years earlier, and we played the pipes and we Amazing Grace, and we did the Soldier's Prayer. And it was during that moment of silence, as if on cue, when they all rose up out of the dark and came over and surrounded us. So to me, that's a visceral living experience. I don't think for a moment that there wasn't something very spiritual or even supernatural about that moment. So a Chuck might be gone. I don't see him answering over there. That's too bad. I would love to have heard. Chuck Henrickson is somebody who did Renaissance Festival with Dave Potter and I for many years. So he said, Will-O-Wisp, Scotty, we had something similar at Gettysburg. And Gettysburg, of course, is one of the most haunted, if you will, battlefields in United States history. So if you're still out there, come on in, Chuck. If not, we'll get you another time. Oh, there he is. trying to figure out how to call in. Rookie here, take this link, brother. I'll paste it again, Chuck. Take that link, click on it, or paste it in your browser window, and that'll get you right into my show. I don't think it's going to ask you to do anything else. And you'll pop up outside in the wings here, and I'll be able to bring you in. So give that a try and see if it works for you. Hey, Ryan Gale. Good to see you, brother. Ryan, you were at Fort Ticonderoga with us in 2001, weren't you? So, I don't know for sure. I think you were.
I was going to say, Scotty, there are so many places like that. Gettysburg, Carlisle Indian School, Wounded Knee. There's ghosts that still haunt that place.
Yes.
It's not just native and non-native. It's all whatever they may be. And here in New York, it's the same thing where there are things that, I've been to ceremonies, Native American ceremonies, Sundance, Inepi, Sweat Lodge, where I've seen things I cannot explain. I grew up Catholic. I was very skeptical.
Yes.
But there are things that we cannot explain. You showed me a picture of a ghost in Egypt.
Yes.
And you can't explain that, nor can I. But it's such an ancient land. And so that says to me that Wanagi, the ghosts, still roam the land because they're lost. And they haven't found their way. They haven't found their way, but they're still wandering what they used to know. And Egypt is such an ancient land.
I'll make a pop cultural reference. Do you remember the movie when it came out, The Others? I think it was with Nicole Kidman. Her husband, she runs across her husband, and it's obviously his ghost. She sees him wandering down the road, and he's war-torn. It's post-World War I. And she sees him on the road, and she runs up to him. And at first you think he's shell-shocked because he looks at her and he says, I have to find my home. I can't find my home, he kept saying. And so I thought that was very telling. There's Chuck Hendrickson. Hold on, guys, in the wings out there. Let me bring Chuck in. Add him to stream. There's my good friend Chuck. Hold on, guys, in the wings out there. Let me bring Chuck. You might have to turn down your sound and just play through your headsets because it's bouncing back at me. I'm going to take down my banner here and open it up a bit. And I'm going to add a couple of our regulars here. I've got Niall Parkinson from Ireland, and I've got Professor Bauer. Chuck is an old friend of mine from the Renaissance Festival. And Chuck, you were talking in the chat room about having a similar experience with the Fireflies at Gettysburg. Tell us about that.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on, Scotty. I appreciate it.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, we were out filming the movie Gettysburg. Way back when that came out. Fun movie. And we spent weeks out there. I think we were out there for 3 weeks total. But we did a lot of after hours walking around through Devil's Den, Little Round Top area, and then we went to the original 1st Minnesota Volunteer Infantry Charge, that location. We were allowed to be on those sites, whereas usually you're not allowed to go out there. But as reenactors from Minnesota, that's where we went and did. And we had that same experience. We were there late at night, and we all stood there. The group of us that were out there stood at the original site, the original charge of the 1st Minnesota, and said our words and said our prayers. And as after, right on cue, like you said, all the fireflies just rose up out of the tall grass. It was pretty awesome.
As if on cue.
Us around for a little while and went away. It was pretty awesome experience.
As if on cue.
Yeah, as if on cue.
Wow. So what did you think of it at the time? What did you say amongst yourselves? What was the feeling you got from that when you experienced that?
It's the feeling was amazing. I mean, you feel like you feel the guys that were there, all the original people that were there fighting the war. I don't know. You felt connected. It was a lot of fun.
Right.
Something I've never really experienced any other place I've been to before. But that was the heaviest I've ever felt.
All right, good night,
That
everybody.
connection before was out there, the original
Yeah,
charge
how do you rate
location,
Lost
and then up in Devil's Den amongst all the rocks and all that stuff.
Yeah. Now,
So-
were you actually part of the troops in the movie Gettysburg?
Yeah, I was.
I didn't know that.
Oddly enough, I don't look anything like I look now. I was only, I think, 17 years old. I was skinny
Wow.
and had long hair, and oddly enough, I'm married to my wife, I was dating in high school, and she was the one that found me in a few different scenes.
You're a
I'd completely
strapping
forgotten
young
what I looked
lad.
like. Yeah, I've got it written on the box where you can see me in the movie.
Nice. 28 minutes and 12 seconds in, you'll see me. One of my favorite scenes, was it that movie or was it Gods and Generals? There was a scene where the Irish were charging. And I believe it was the Confederates they were charging the Irish. And it was Irish charging Irish. And the Irish on the Confederate line were like, don't charge, don't go back. They're yelling, go back. And they kept charging, and they're firing on them. They're having to fire on them by order. And they're dropping some of them. And these men, they're crying, and they're watching who they considered their brothers falling. And then finally they called the retreat, and the Union soldier, the line of the Irish brigade, turned and retreated. And all the Irish and the Confederate, they're all throwing their hats in the air, and they're cheering them on. And this was an event that actually took place. And they depicted it in the movie. They're cheering them on, and they're crying. They're saying, go, brothers, run. And, something like that, and cheering them on. That was a very moving.
very
I think
interesting.
that was Gettysburg.
Do you remember that story or that movie called Glory?
Yes.
With Matthew Broderick.
Yes.
I think it was
Denzel Washington.
it was one of Denzel Washington's first roles.
Fort Sumter or before that, wasn't it? It was, what was the battle that was being depicted there? But it was what
You
they
guys
called the
will have to
Negro
tell me that.
Brigade.
Yeah.
But it
Then
just,
guy called
it
Robert
just
Shaw led that.
Yes.
Chuck's description and your own, Scotty, just reminded me of that hopeless kind of charge that they did up the hill. And I can't even remember. Was it a Civil War movie or?
It was Civil War. It was a movie about what they called the Negro Brigade. I think I don't know if there was a number attached to it, but it was the black conscripted soldiers.
Yes.
And it was a white officer, of course. It couldn't allow black officers, even in the Union Army back then.
Yes.
But it was a white officer that was leading them reluctantly. I think. At
Broadway. Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that was an interesting part of American.
And that's a very old movie. That's kind of an 80s movie at this
least
stage.
20 years old.
Yeah. I actually think that Denzel won an Oscar for that, or one of them did. Anyway.
Denzel will.
Maybe it was
Denzel Washington. Yeah.
Matthew, I'm sorry to interrupt. Matthew, help me out here. Who was the older gentleman? He played on Sesame Street. It wasn't Denzel, but it was not Samuel Jackson.
Samuel Jackson was on Sesame Street.
Was he?
Yes.
Probably must be him, yeah. Right?
There's a clip of him out there when he went in and did it, and it's like
10 bats, 50 bats.
Wow.
100 bats.
It was a black gentleman that played a strong
middle-aged guy. Yeah.
On Sesame Street.
But he was on.
I have an idea who you're talking about. You see, Barbados used to show Sesame Street at 4 o'clock every evening for the kids. But for the past couple of years now, you don't see it anymore.
So you start popping your popcorn at 3:45.
Yeah.
But he was a black gentleman that played the Electric Man. If you remember
Sure.
Man,
I think so. Yeah.
You said that.
Electric Company. And
he was in Glory.
Ring a bell. It rings a bell.
He was in Glory. He was in Glory, Scotty.
Yeah.
But he played so many other roles as president. Oh gosh, I can't remember his name. I see his face.
Morgan Freeman.
Morgan Freeman.
Morgan Freeman.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I don't know why
he's a brilliant guy. He does a lot of nice National Geographic documentaries.
Let me ask you all, since we've got 6 people here tonight, not to glorify war, and there's always, you always got to put the caveats on things nowadays. But what do you consider to be your favorite or the finest war movie ever made?
Well, without a doubt, I'll jump in there straight away.
Do it, Niall.
Saving Private Ryan is pretty exceptional in every respect. It gives the horror of war and the horror of that kind of moral kind of degradation. It's not kind of like, it's a bit Yankee Doodle at times, for a European, because it's
about American soldiers.
View. Yes, it's about American soldiers. So some of the stuff is, like
I will tell you. You
just let me finish.
Oh,
but
okay.
I think it's the most effective and most brilliantly cinematically filmed portrayal of the horrors of war that you will ever see. And probably the other one would be another Spielberg movie, the other one, what's the other one? The black and white one. I can't think of the name right now.
Schindler's List.
Schindler's List. Yeah.
That.
But
Holocaust.
But the first 25 minutes of Saving Private Ryan is just horrific. And
Normandy Beach.
We were talking about Chuck was talking about what he felt from the site of Gettysburg. That beach is haunted, I mean, the way that these guys were just blown asunder,
blown
as
apart.
The movie progressed, you can say that it was a little bit Hollywoodish in places, but the overall effect of that movie is it has to be the best horror movie. Oh, the best horror movie. I was going to say. Well,
I got to say before you come in, Ruben. You kind of stole my thunder there. I was going to say Saving Private Ryan is my favorite and most heartfelt movie. There, you mentioned the name of the movie. I started tearing up over here just because of the emotions that movie evokes for me. You remember the scene when the Tom Hanks character has been shot fatally, and he's leaning up against that tank and he's shooting with his 9mm. And, but he pulls the Matt Damon character close to him and he says, all the guys that had died, saving his life to get him home. He brings him in and he has hardly a whisper and he said, earn this.
Earn this, yeah.
And I got to tell you, when it switched that scene back to the old man and he's standing at the gravesite or the cemetery at Omaha Beach, and he looks at his wife and he said, have I earned this? Have I lived a good life? That to me was the soul of that movie. That's what that movie was all about.
It was a beautiful movie. If I had one criticism, is that the German forces were portrayed as they would have been, as these evil kind of faceless characters. Remember the guy Nefarious. They took over this lonely outpost of machine gunners, and the medical guy was killed, and they dragged this guy up and they wanted to execute him, and Tom Hanks' character just let him go, and he turned up at the end of the movie, but he was like the villain. And also the scene where the two guys are struggling upstairs with the dagger and the German guys.
That was pretty
so the
intense.
Germans were made out to be this horrific, but it wasn't a German story. It was an American story,
right?
And I suppose they tried to do their best, but it would have been nice if they kind of maybe introduced a character. But I suppose that wasn't the essence of the movie.
Right.
To introduce a German character, which was exactly like them, because
it was about these guys who went to save the life of a guy that had to go home.
Yeah. So I suppose the one German character that they did introduce happened to be the guy who shot Tom Hanks at the end.
Ruben.
Yeah, I was going to say, capitalize on that. You're right, Neil. That is such a powerful movie. It makes me cry every fucking time. The Pianist,
same here,
just as good. With Adrian Brody, and there were good Germans. I was married to a German. I speak German. I speak German, and I went to Germany, and they won't talk about it. So I totally get it. You're right. But the movie that I want to profess is Little Big Man with Dustin Hoffman and Chief Dan George, which they did the same thing in taking the effect of bringing in one of Dustin Hoffman's wives, Little Big Man. She was Vietnamese, and this was during the Vietnamese War, and they wanted to bring her in as a Native American, and she's screaming, running across away from Custer's men. And they sing that song.
Yeah. That was. And may I interject something here? When I was reading in "Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee," they were talking about one of the earlier raids that Custer had done with the 7th Cavalry, and what's that tune called? It's
Gary On?
Yeah.
I think it's Gary On music.
They came in roaring in at dawn in the snow.
Washita.
To a little camp that had no weapons.
Black Kettle.
Raided them and destroyed this thing, and they're playing there's a name that goes with it.
I know. I can't remember it either, Scotty.
I think it's Gary On, I think, is one of those songs.
Yeah.
I think so.
But it was one of the charging songs, and they would come in and...
Yeah. And the thing is that they promised Chief Black Kettle, if he flies the American flag over TP, that they would be safe, but they never kept their word. Yeah.
I always get confused
Black
with these
Kettle
movies.
was Cheyenne, just outside of Denver.
Yeah, that was Black Kettle's camp.
And he had a truce flag, and they still...
The United States flag was given to him by the cavalry at one of the treaty signings, and he was told, as long as you fly this flag over your lodge, you'll be safe. And he was flying that flag, and they were all killed.
Do you remember that movie?
Wichita, Oklahoma. Yeah.
Yeah, I always get confused with that movie. Do you remember that movie that Richard Harris made?
A Man Called Horse.
A Man Called Horse. They pulled him up through the chest.
Same era.
Yeah,
the Sundance
Way.
The Sundance.
Yeah. Wasn't that around the same time?
Ruben's got his own scars from that. Yeah. Ruben, show us your scars. No, he's got his scars from doing that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and Jeremiah Johnson and all these movies are around the same time.
Yep. Jeremiah Johnson.
Yeah. Jeremiah Johnson is one of my favorites, and my girls grew up.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Neil, it's not to denote or despise or dissipate what happened with Schindler's List, The Pianist, and all the things that the Germans did to the Jews. I'm married to a Jew, and it's hard. It's hard to hear.
Yes.
You're all tribal in that way. Professor, say something. You're so quiet.
Well, I'm just enjoying the conversation.
Don't get him started. He's worse than me. Once he starts,
don't put a nickel in him.
Hey, don't push the button. Here it comes.
Yeah.
Can you guys hear me? Okay. Can you hear me all right?
The jukebox.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I've just
but
been
the
admiring.
interesting thing is socially.
Go ahead now.
Socially, there is an interesting correlation. In the 70s was the big movies about the Native American cultures. You know, Jeremiah Johnson, the man called Horace,
Billy
Dustin
Jack.
Hoffman, all of these stuff were in the 70s. Yeah. Big, and then we had Dances with Wolves and, you know, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then it kind of stopped, you know, the whole Native American thing. And that it was a huge outpouring of American guilt. I don't know.
Perhaps, yeah.
And then we went into a new era where we, from an American point of view, we examined World War II. I mentioned earlier on that Saving Private Ryan was my favorite.
Navajo Code Talkers.
Because the Wind Talkers.
Yeah, because Saving Private Ryan just shows the horror of war. But then, you know, as the movie went on, it became a little bit, you know, sort of, you know,
sure,
a few little messages here, there, and everywhere. But the opening 25 minutes of Saving Private Ryan, and in fact, the veterans who were at the screening of that, half of them had to be let out because it was so accurate.
That's like probably a horrible movie, they say, but Pearl Harbor with Ben Affleck and whatever the chick was, I can't remember her name. The love story. A lot of the veterans hated that movie, but they said the scene. They did the attack on Pearl Harbor minute by minute in the film. And it was an accurate recreation of the attack on Pearl Harbor and then the airfields up above. And but they said you can throw out the rest of the movie, but that made it fantastic. And that really is good.
Was
Midway, says Ryan Gale. Is a good movie.
Yeah. Battle of Midway. I heard that.
So, Professor.
Yes, sir.
I get more than two people in here and I lose track. Although I can see you, I see you all.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you, Neil, for sharing what you shared.
Yeah.
Thanks, brother.
And
Professor.
Yes. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Huh?
Check 1, 2. All right. Is this thing on?
Is this on?
So I've been admiring the conversation amongst everyone and your perspectives of these impactful cinematic pieces, right? These are things that have sound and visuals, and just if they do it really right. What's that?
Fury.
Yes. And done right, it's amazing. And especially if the story has that emotional heart tug essence to it, which is what the music and the visuals are trying to accomplish anyway. And at first, when Scotty asked the question, I'm thinking war movies. What would I consider a war movie that I would say, yeah, I really liked? And almost immediately, and it's probably just because
don't tell me
I'm
Star
Wars up there. No, no, I went to Rat Patrol.
Oh yeah, Rat Patrol.
That?
When I was a kid,
Rat Patrol.
The Rat Patrol. It was a 1960s black and white TVs. Hey, wait a minute. I wish I could do this justice, but it comes to mind. Dun 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 dun. That was the theme music from Rat Patrol when I was a kid.
Well, I know that sounds like F Troop.
No. That wasn't F Troop.
Anyway, so the first thing I thought was, and I guess it's because my first memory of seeing anything like that was Rat Patrol. You used to sit and watch that in black and white in front of the TV. It's like, and you had to get there when it started because there was no VHS or anything.
VCR.
And then the next thing I thought was, from the standpoint as Niall was going through and talking about that first 25 minutes of Saving Private Ryan, which is just they developed a new filming technique to do that for that movie. And that's why it's just so incredibly intense and amazing. So, and then you could think, of all of these current crop of superhero and comic book the Marvels and the DCs and all that. I mean,
Yeah,
these guys
Superman.
are putting out some seriously good shit. I mean, it is graphically, visually, and written pretty well too. I think they're hanging on. But then I thought of, well, no, more of a war kind of thing. And the only other thing that I think gets close to what Niall was talking about was Saving Private Ryan, but not quite there, but still amazing, is a series called SEAL Team 6.
Oh yeah.
And
now, are you talking about the series SEAL Team 6 or
one.
just SEAL Team?
Is it SEAL Team? Yeah, SEAL Team.
With David Boreanaz or whatever his name is.
Yeah, that guy. Right.
Still on right
SEAL
now,
Team.
right?
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
Chuck, have you seen that one? Phenomenal series.
Yeah, it's really good.
It's like it's in the Jack Ryan kind of motif, which I think is really good. And so when I'm sorry to go down that rabbit hole, we take you down there, but when you guys said war, that's what tripped me. I got to think of my definition of war, because everything you guys talked about were
all
cinematic
the guys,
representations and
SEAL
reproductions that are amazing.
SEAL Team has been so praised by actual former and current members of SEAL teams. And it has been so realistic, they say.
Oh, it's amazing.
And it's not just about the guns and the fighting and the shoot 'em up, which is fantastically exciting to watch, but it's about what happens to them as individuals as they've been doing this for so many years and the stuff they go through. I remember the one episode where there was an old SEAL Team member, older, and he was struggling with the VA, and the younger guy who came in, I can't remember his name.
Yeah, it was the one with the pickup truck,
the sharpshooter. Yes. And it's
that
like
was...
he's trying to get into the VA. He's helping him and all this.
Oh
and
yeah,
the PTSD, the PTS, and that's what that episode was about. And he ends up just killing us.
Just a superb,
wrenching,
Ruben war at the intelligence and the special ops,
yes,
level, which is like, well, that's that. And they use the techniques of SEAL teams. I mean, they're not hiding stuff. They're putting together, this is how it works. So I'd like to toss
Sarah.
this.
It's a very good comment you made there.
Yeah, Ruben, can I ask a question before we... did you ever see the movie Dead Man? It's from 1995. It was filmed in black and white. It has Johnny Depp in it. It has Robert Mitchum, I think, in his last role.
There's a good old screen actor.
The soundtrack, Robert...
I used to say, I feel as tired as Robert Mitchum's eyes look.
Was by Neil Young. It had Gabriel Byrne. It had a cast of thousands in it. It's the director was a guy called Jim Jarmusch, right? And it's kind of a cult movie. It was before... it was when Johnny was still making his independent movies when he was younger.
No, I'm sorry, Neil. I did not.
Okay. Well, if you ever get a chance to check it out, it's called Dead Man. It's just about this on the frontier. He's in the frontiers. This guy is traveling down from Cleveland to go to an interview at the end of the line. And half the movie is, well, not half the movie, but close to a third is on a train journey, where he's dressed in this strange suit and all these strange characters keep appearing, and they're shooting a buffalo out through the windows. And he ending up he has to go for an interview in this town called Machine at the end of the line. So, he's poured out onto the rail tracks, and he has to make his own way up to the office. It's like a metalworks. And the guy says, John Hurt was in it, a cast of thousands. And he eventually says, there's no job for you here. This letter's out of date. You're on your own. Anyway, he ends up befriending a Native American man played by a blues guitarist called Gary Farmer,
I know Gary Farmer. Yeah.
Yes. And he was called a Nobody. Yeah, I forget in the Indian, in Lakota, but he says in English he tried to, because Johnny Depp says, I don't understand a word you're saying, because Johnny Depp at one stage was shot through the chest by some guy who he ended up with his girlfriend or whatever, and Gary Farmer's character, the Indian, and he was trying to dig the bullet out of his chest, and he says, you stupid white man, the still is too close to your heart, and Johnny is stupid, and Gary Farmer's character said, do you have any tobacco? He says, no, I don't smoke. Oh, yeah. Do you not have tobacco? When he started pulling his sword, and he was dressed in all the gear. And at one stage, what is your name? Johnny Depp says, and he says, nobody. What does that mean? And he had a Kasika or something. It sounded really strange, but it was like, he who speaks too much and say nothing. My name is nobody. So they ended up being partners, and they went on this kind of raid throughout, this Indian outcast from his tribe, and this white man who had been turned down from a job and he had nowhere to go, and he had been shot and he was mortally wounded. So they went through this really, really profound moral journey about discussing what he was doing there and what they were doing there and what was going on, and it was very, and I remember it reminds me of you, Ruben, because Gary Farmer's character in the movie, the Indian character, he used to say some amazing things. And Johnny Depp was shouting, put him up against a tree, and he said, when the lightning comes down, it doesn't strike from above. What it does, it projects the rocks from underneath, and it projects them into the sky. That's what causes. And Johnny Depp was saying, they had these great conversations around the campfire. I've known you for 3 weeks, and I can't understand a single word you're saying, And even though he was speaking English, he says the bolts are projected from below. They project the rocks from overhead, And it's like, obviously he was speaking in this Indian kind of cultural aspect, which Johnny Depp was trying very hard to understand. So, but that was horrifying movie as well, because they eventually Johnny Depp's character was called William Blake, and the Indian character was thrown out of his tribe because he ended up in getting educated in England and came back to America to rejoin his tribe, but they rejected him. So he was he says, but he thought he was the actual William Blake, the poet and painter. And he says, you're William Blake, so both of them projected their own kind of cultural persona onto each other, and they went on these raids then together throughout the movie, and they killed everyone in sight. Indians, white men, they just said this is all wrong. So if you ever get a chance to find that movie, it's the perfect analogy for the horrors of war, but also the companionship that can result from extreme circumstances in war, from people who don't understand each other on the surface and are forced into a situation where they become, so.
I just want to say welcome to Christopher Schultz in the chat room, by the way. Christopher, thanks for listening in. First time I saw you here, I think.
Yeah, Ruben. I wanted to ask Ruben Fassars a question. There's this place, and I'm glad Chuck Hendrickson is on to. This place called Devil's Den there in the States. They say it's haunted or so, where the people have seen OC operations. I saw mysteries.
Chuck's been there.
I saw mysteries. I saw a Native American ghost. I was walking around, I think it was a field or something, where a man was walking up a tree or something. And when he came down, he saw a Native American chief actually following him, and then he, then vanished. So it seems to me that Native Americans have a lot of ghost stories as well too, because there's a lot of death occurred in these areas too, So
any ghost stories, Chuck, from Devil's Den?
This land is totally. I'm sorry, Scotty, but this land is totally haunted.
Is haunted.
Black, Native, white, Gettysburg,
Swedes, those damn Swedes.
And Swedes, everything and everybody. But you know what? Going back to what Neil said, I want to say this, is that in the beginning of our Native American culture, Lakota, my tribe, there was a void a void, a blackness, and there was a deity, and the deity broke himself open, and out of his blood was blue water. Half of him became pebbles, granite, stone, and the other half became female, Maka, the earth. And that's what we live on, the earth. And so the rock covers her, clothed her. And when that deity, Ea, opened himself open, a voice was heard. And this is what Neil makes me think about, a voice in the darkness, the void, that said, I am everything, and I am nothing. I am everything, and I am nothing. And that's all of us. That's Scotty, that's Chuck, that's Matthew, that's Professor Bauer, that's Neil. We are nothing, and we are everything. And that, to me, expands our consciousness like a pebble in a pond that's still
the ripple effect.
ripples, echoes. And we are those things if we believe it. If we believe it. And I love that about what Neil said, in that how we are everything and nothing.
And we're not actually going off track here, because I still think we're
pretty good
of war movies, in that trauma is what we're talking about here. Trauma can manifest itself, in many different ways. But when you come through direct conflict, having to kill, hand-to-hand combat, whatever it is, Chuck can talk about that. It's the haunted land, it's as Ruben said.
Sure.
These leave essences of themselves. Sarah is floating around. She should come on. I'm not sure why she hasn't.
Sarah could come on.
Yeah, she should, because she's very smart when it comes to stuff like this. But I think that's what we're talking about. The kind of the essence of trauma, or what's left behind. Is you can sense it, at times. And that's why war movies, when they're really good, you can get a sense of that. You can say, wow, this isn't the end of the story. I mean, the ground is soaked in blood and sweat and tears. And
speaking of Gettysburg, like Chuck was talking about Gettysburg and being at the Devil's Den and a Round Top and so on. We went when I was with the Ghost Hunters. We went and did an event at Gettysburg, and it was at the Farnsworth House, which is I don't know if it's an active bed and breakfast, but it's definitely a museum. The whole house is set up. I think you can stay there as a bed and breakfast, but it's a brick house right in the main town. And the brick building is all full of, and Chuck, I'm sure you experienced this when you were in Gettysburg, full of old pockmarks and bullet holes from still the Civil War 150 plus years ago. And they say the little window up in the attic there was the site where there were the 5 Confederate snipers who would lay down on the floor, because this little window about that wide, maybe 2 feet tall, was at floor level, and they'd lay down on the floor and they would snipe out of there. And there were 5 of them killed up there. So the house itself is fairly haunted, but this is the place where they said Farnsworth, it was owned by a Mr. Sweeney. This is historical record. And that his wife, after his death, had filed this with the county. He was a pedophile. He had impregnated his daughters. And there were times where there were, according to what we were told that night, there were some of the babies had been buried in the walls down in what they call the catacombs. You can go down into the finished basement now, but there's a door to the broom closet. And in the back of the broom closet is a big heavy steel door that's all locked up. And the manager came down and opened it up for us late at night. And we went inside there, and it was all the old stonework and a cramped spot. And so this is where we got those, if you remember this story I told. And it would be rough for me to believe this if I wasn't there experiencing it. But we had a fellow by the name of Adam Bly was with us. And I was also with Aaron Sagers. And we were sitting in that little room together. And Adam Bly is a demonologist. He is the guy he's not a priest, but he's very Catholic. He's flown to the Vatican to speak to the Vatican priests about exorcism and demonology and so on. He's well known in this, but he's sitting there, and at the time, he said, I feel all kinds of dark presences here. And he's saying out loud while we're in the catacombs, he's saying, I'm hearing children, but he says, you can't be here. You have to move away. You have to get out. And he said, there's a dark figure that's preventing these children from. Then he felt his ministry was to pray for these kids. And so we're back out, and the late Mark and Debbie Constantino were doing EVP demonstrations in the other side of the basement. And they had about 6, 7, 8 people in a circle there, and they're recording. And I said to Debbie, I said, would you ask if there's a Mr. Sweeney here when we came out of that catacomb? And she said, okay. And so she stood, some of you may remember this story. I've told it once before, but so they're demonstrating live, and she says, okay, we've got the recorders going. Is there a Mr. Sweeney in the house? She asks. And she pauses so there can be an answer if he answers on the recording. And she asked that a couple of different ways and went about 3 minutes. And she said, okay, let's play it back. So she played back the recording over the speakers to the small group here. And you're hearing her say, is there a Mr. Sweeney here on the recording? And you hear a voice growling, and he says, I'm Sweeney. It comes right out of the speakers. And Adam looks at me. We're standing in the back. He's kind of leaning like this on the pillar, and he looks at me and goes, oh, he doesn't sound too happy. And very understated Adam was. And then as she's asking questions on the tape for the next couple of minutes, you hear little children's voices saying, help us, save us from the Father. And they're repeating. And then you hear this Sweeney growling again and rah, 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 and the kids crying, and it cuts off. And so Adam ended up, or I'm sorry, not Adam. Adam stayed all night. He was praying for the kids in his Catholic way of doing things. And so that was, I only bring that up because that was right there at Gettysburg, right in the town. Somebody who owned this house during that time period. With all they say Gettysburg is the most haunted town in America. And I believe it.
Could you give me the name of that gentleman again? Adam Bly, is it?
Adam Bly, B-L-A-I. He's B-L-A-I. Now, he and I haven't spoken in a few years. Just when I stopped working for the Ghost Hunters on their magazine, Adam Bly would go to the events. I would go to some events, and we'd cross paths. But we talked a couple of times over the years, but just parted ways. Not anything hostile.
But he was pretty involved with the Catholic Church from the exorcism point of view, and from the
very
ritual.
Involved with the Catholic Church. He was very involved with, if you remember, John Zaffis, who is the nephew to Ed and Lorraine Warren, and he got his start in ghost hunting in the early 70s with them with the original Amityville haunting.
Sure.
And but he went on. He is now considered the godfather of the paranormal. John is, and but he and Adam used to do a lot of stuff.
I'll have to check out Adam and see what he's up to.
Check him out.
Do you guys mind if I toss a couple into the discussion?
No, Professor.
You've been rather
go home.
tonight, Professor Bauer.
He can't get a word in edgeways.
I've been enjoying it. It's been great.
Yeah.
So first question, Chuck, have you been following the Skinwalker Ranch series?
Mm.
Oh, a good question. No, I have not. I've been
excellent.
I was following more along the disappointing Oak Island series.
Yeah, I've been consuming that too. It's the greatest thing for me, especially at Oak Island, is all the toys and the tech they're throwing at it, and it's like, bring it on. What else you got? And it's great to see that. I'm not sure
I haven't
what
watched
they're going to
the series yet, but I want to get into that one. That's one that's on my list of whenever I have some time, I'm going to sit down and just binge the first couple seasons of it, because it's been out a couple years now.
Yeah, well, it's just finished the third. I think they're starting the fourth.
Okay.
Yeah, and they just finished the third season. Yeah, you don't have to see the first two. They have these
recaps,
digging deeper episodes where they do all the highlights and stuff. This last season, though, with the way they ended with the tech, finding these
those whatever that was coming out,
just structures using high resolution,
like LiDAR
drone.
or something. It was a step beyond LiDAR, wasn't it? It was that.
No, it was a 3-dimensional model which shot lasers to get the images. So the images were laser born.
Recreate the whole terrain and everything.
And they just they continued to sweep it, and then it generated these structures that appear to be just there but not. And they're in specific areas where they've had
coming
a lot
out.
of.
It looks like clouds in the air that are
very
flat when they go around them. It's like, what is that? What is it picking up?
That's cool.
So I thought that with the work that you've been doing, that you'd find that interesting if you haven't seen it.
No, I'm gonna have to go back and look at that one.
Yeah, watch that.
Highly
one.
recommend it.
Really, really well done. It's not just another one of your Oak Island series.
No, this isn't your reality archaeology series. This is these guys.
This
are
is
doing
the guy
shit.
who owns the ranch, a businessman, a millionaire, multimillionaire, whatever, that had this team come in and they did a series. They wanted I'm sure they wanted it to be a selling series, but it ends up the stuff they're running into and finding out is pretty intense.
Yeah, they're throwing the toys and the tech at it. So they're getting GPS, infrared lasers, they're throwing rockets. They got EMF meters all over the place. But one of the interesting things is they keep running into this spectrum anomaly at 1.6 gigahertz. And it shows up at odd times when other strange phenomena is going on. So if you haven't seen any of that, you'll really enjoy it. You're welcome.
It's a great show. It's a great scientific approach to examining this place.
The other question I wanted to throw onto the table is along the lines of what we just talked about. The technology that we have to capture and observe and analyze and do whatever we can with all the different frequencies that exist that we know of. And then then that's in the physical scientific side. And then we have the metaphysical side, which is most of the belief systems that we've been talking about, particularly Native Americans, Reuben. In fact, what you were saying was exactly what the Tao says, and that's my personal philosophy of the way I approach is from the perspective of the Tao. So we have all these different delineations of existence. We have the material, we have this conscious, which has a couple of 3 different levels, and then we have this metaphysical astral projection, which we talked about last night. This ability of being able to consciously be yourself, but be able to be somewhere else in another form. And then the whole concepts of reincarnation is, once this biological experience is over with, I think we're all here agree that we do continue afterwards in some form of different, some delineation, depending on the belief system, theology, philosophy, whatever it is you follow. So with all of that, there's all these different dimensions of existence. Where do you think these ghosts, these people that you've been talking about in the fields and from the wars, where do you think what are those entities and where do they fit within that existence structure?
You asking Chuck? Chuck,
anyone.
you have the floor.
I just threw that dirt on the table.
I think Ruben wants to
Ruben's got
come
his
in
hand
there.
up, though. I don't.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ruben.
Ruben's got something to say. He's got the finger of wisdom up.
He's got the talking stick.
Sticking up my nose. Yeah. You know, I love this. I love this conversation. It's just so metaphysical and scientific at the same time, and spiritual. And what I want to say is, I'll end with the spiritual aspect, but I'm going to be going to Carlisle Indian School, where 4 Lakota people, my tribe, teenagers came to go speak to the president at the time in regards to Native American relations, and they stopped at Carlisle Indian School in Pennsylvania, not far from me, which I'm going to go and play flute. And there are so many dead children buried there, and the Pope has come to Canada to apologize. That's recent. That's today.
That's right, yeah. Last couple of days. Yeah.
So, you know, my wife, who's Jewish, says, why don't they come to America and do that? Why don't the Pope comes to America to do that? And I don't know, but
he probably will.
I'm just going to finish just saying that they should. And they need to be acknowledged. And those 4 teenagers said, let's take them home. Let's take them home. And so they started to excavate those little kids that were buried there. Unbeknownst to their families, they just never came home. So, you know, Scotty, I would love to do something spiritual in that area where those that can read the spirits.
Let's you and I talk about that this week and see what we can do.
Yeah.
I have a big, I'm going to say this now. I have a big thing with, don't think me cold on this. I have a big thing with apologizing for past grievances that I was not there to commit.
No.
That none of us alive today experienced or committed. I am all for memorializing. I am all for grieving over past sins and past wrongdoing. Apologizing, maybe in a different sense, you could say, I'm so sorry that this happened. But to apologize and say, 200 years ago, 150 years ago, my ancestors did this.
And you know what, Scotty? You know what, Scotty? And here's the thing that it irritates me. You feel that way naturally.
Mm-hmm.
What's happened is that's been imposed on you.
Yes.
You've been given this character association and therefore guilt by association.
And if you don't apologize officially, there's a problem with you.
Well, the only reason that's done is because any other argument it doesn't work either. That is the last thing, because it's a subjective, emotional character attack.
Mm-hmm.
So what if you use words and you use them against someone personally and you do it with emotion, then doesn't matter if it makes any sense. It is the noise du jour. It is the in your face of the moment. And you go, now, wait a minute. I was minding my own business, and we've become in the same space, and you've taken authority and command responsibility to make sure that I am adhering to your dysfunction. And that is just the fundamental thing that's going on. All the ways that it's flowered and colored and sprinkled on and whipped cream and all the other crap that goes along with it, that's just window dressing. That's just for the show. That's for the impact. But the fundamental level is that it is a bunch of BS being given by people who aren't sure of their BS, who haven't validated and vetted their own BS, and they have now internalized it to an emotional state, and they get a lot of support. I mean, we're getting messages that are so conflicted. They're designed not only in word and visual, but in sound, to elicit a constant state of anxiety. a constant state of shit. There's a lot of stuff going on, and if you first of all you got to turn it off sometimes. But when it's on, you got to make sure your bullshit filter and system is highly tuned and attenuated.
Right.
And
I can say this a million times. Ruben and I are a good example of this because he has his issues. There's times Ruben has called me and feeling the weight of the grief of the past. And we talk ourselves through these things because these things exist, but at the same time, we know that we're brothers now. We work in the here and the now. We can recognize and memorialize and even grieve over past things that have happened, but we can't camp there. We live now. We're in the now. We can't change what happened. We can only change where we are.
Which is not necessarily true. I just want to jump in. I want to go back to what Robert said a little while ago, and I think, Robert, you asked something about are these dimensional
what of the different levels of existence that we kind of know are these bodies, these people that are still in these places where they died?
Yes.
Where is that? Is that like the metempsychosis? Is it a purgatory? Is it what is that?
Yeah, well,
is it a physical realm?
In my opinion, it is a form of purgatory, and it's actually formed from trauma. Huge trauma on a scale, familial, generational. I think I sent you a message earlier on about you were talking about the astral planes. I was talking about the astral corpses. A lot of the magicians like to think in terms of the astral corpse, or what Jung would have called the shadow, which is where the trauma kind of ends up floating around, and it kind of, these are the things that haunt our past and haunt our future and haunt the way we think. Is trauma based upon the past, upon very human experiences. I think that's something of what you were talking about. I firmly believe it's dimensional. It's like somebody who's locked in a Colombian jail for 6 months. You're going to come out at the end of that pretty traumatized. And you're going to carry that onto your kids, and they're going to carry it onto your kids, and you're going to be emotionally unavailable, and there's no way that you can say, well, this is there's no comparison. There is a direct comparison.
So let me ask you this: you just said, you go through it and then you pass it on and you carry it on to your kids, and so there's a cyclical iteration of passing of that specific set of frequencies that are in that negative sense.
Except that it's all circular.
Yeah.
And the problem is that there is a place in the middle. It's like a kind of a, if you don't walk in line, you kind of fall out of the circle. You kind of
Ruben, you have the talking stick.
Yeah, I'm just I totally agree with Professor Bauer and Neil saying, Scotty and Chuck, but at the same time, as I told Scotty many times, I wasn't there, and nor was Scotty or Neil or Professor Bauer or Chuck. And so now is what we deal with, in the sense of when they ask Native Americans, how long have your people been here, or Irish people or Scottish people been here, we'll say our legends, our stories say forever. Our creation story says forever. And then anthropologists will say to us in America, they've been here for 12,000 years, across the Bering Strait. And it's true.
And other areas.
I think it goes back a lot longer than that.
Yeah, probably, but it's because there were 4 ice ages and we followed the animals. And so time is a man construct of what we think we are and what we belong. And to answer Professor Bauer's concept, I love the stars in the background there because it reminds me of the ghost road about death, that when we die, Lakota's Native Americans believe we follow that ghost road to the south, which is the Milky Way. So we go to the end. And how did they know that there was a fork in the road? But there is. There's a fork in the road where it goes to the right and it goes to the left. And there's an old woman that sits there in the crux of the ghost road. She sits there and she asks you, Professor Bauer, did you live a good life? And if you lie, she'll know. She'll know and say, go to your right, which is the short road. Short road. And then you fall off and you're reincarnated to a fish or a snake or an animal or a human again to start your life and try again.
Okay.
But if you don't lie, Professor Bauer, and say, I lived the best as I could, go to your left.
And Professor Bauer,
and
when
then,
she asks you what your favorite color is, don't say yellow. No, blue. Ah! So
she will know. And
she will know.
So, and you go into the other world, which is the beyond, nirvana, the happy hunting ground, heaven, or whatever it may be. We don't know. But that's naked eye astronomy that Native people observed by looking into the beyond.
So that I've heard through Tom Goodman and Danny Begay when we were doing the Sacred Ground CD, the Spirit Keeper Sacred Ground. And you did get that, right? Did you get that link?
Yes.
That I sent you? So that makes sense to me, and it concurs with, to me, kind of the way reality seems to be unfolding and every now, because it's in a lot of ways, I think we are always living in the future, even though we say now, that now is the future from what was, and now is again, right? So we're always thinking about what we're going to be doing, and actually going into basically a psychic and predictive mode to anticipate what the next now is going to be, so that we can then organize ourselves to go take advantage of that now, then.
Yeah, it's like, a famous philosopher once says, we haunt ourselves, as a species, we haunt ourselves.
Right.
Indeed.
And, so Ruben, from the original question of where in that existence band, that field of frequencies that we know about esoterically and ethereally, and what we feel and experience materially, are these guys just stuck there? I kind of like what Niall was talking about, in that the trauma can set an energy state of stuck.
Sure. Sarah,
it makes sense.
It's
very logical. It's not. I don't. You guys know me for a little while now. I'm not woo woo. I'm not.
You're just a metalhead from the UK that gets his panties in a bunch when you tell him
about
from Ireland, but
who gets to drink and smoke while he's doing radio with us.
When we talk about these things, it's actually very logical when you think about it. That we haunt the landscapes that we aspire to live in.
Mm-hmm.
We have a mind which we have no idea what it is made of. We have no idea what it is. We have a scientific understanding of how the synapses in our brain sparks, but we don't know what consciousness is. We don't have a definition for these things. So when it comes to trauma, is the only thing that we can identify. It's not happiness. It's not running around a field of sunflowers. It's trauma. You know, it's war, it's destructiveness. We're very warlike.
Well, a trauma doesn't have to come from war. Trauma can come from a something out of the blue, a comet, tripping over
anything.
You know,
so you know, fear. All of these.
So
kind of
I know
aspects.
that in one of my past lives, I don't know it. I feel it. I experience it. I've had readings where I'm said that I'm north of 25 or 30 iterations in this particular time, and one of them I was a dolphin. Another one, though, I was a monk, and I remember getting skewered from behind and just going right through my back, right through my heart, and just feeling what I would sense as some kind of trauma, but also like an instantaneous shut off. It was like it was so quick that it didn't. I know that it happened, but after that, I don't remember anything. There isn't any sense of a psychological effect from having that kind of trauma. And I think you'd agree that would be a traumatic experience, right? Would that fall into your
past life
trauma category?
Right. I think. Well, it's you know, it depends. I mean, you were describing yourself as a dolphin a few seconds ago. Which is,
I know.
And then a monk, which is, you know, it's pretty. You know,
it's eclectic. I know.
These are pretty intelligent beings.
Father Flipper.
You know, yeah. Considering that the dolphins were once on land, you know, they're mammals, so they were once on land, and they said, "Fuck this, we're going back to the ocean," you know.
Right.
So these are pretty smart creatures, you know.
Well,
you're a monk.
So your idea, though, I think it's interesting because if universe is energy, and it's constantly it evolves in itself. It creates and it goes into what we typically called entropy, right? Or it becomes consumed. So the energy is just a cyclical existence that materializes everything.
Yeah.
Energy to materium to the biology and chemistry that we are made of now. But our consciousness is from that consciousness that creates all the rest of it.
No,
There's
right.
no other
the great pool or the great logos.
Right, you can put whatever
we don't understand
title, whatever you
Chuck
want.
Chuck had his finger in the air.
How much of this trauma that you're experiencing, or you're speaking of, not necessarily experiencing, that's all based on individual, though. What about the trauma that the Earth is experiencing at the same time?
Well, it's all connected. You know, it's all connected.
That's a whole set of cycles on its own.
You know,
I mean, to go off that, did you ever get to experience Fort Snelling, Scotty?
Yeah.
Have you been out there to do ghost hunts or anything of that nature? Did they ever let you in there?
In 2008, we were supposed to film, and we actually had Channel 5, Eyewitness News, was coming with us to do an investigation. And at the last minute, the day before, the head of the woman who was in charge of it, the Minnesota Historical Society, called it off because they did not want to raise the ire. I said, "Do you have a problem with us, perhaps the ghost issue?" And she said, "No, I'm full on board." She said, "I believe the place is very haunted." She said, "What I'm afraid of is you're going to raise the ghosts of something that's going to," and they were at heads with the Dakota Native American tribe.
Yeah. Well,
and they didn't want to have to embroil that conflict anymore. So they pulled the plug. Well, Rocky and I went down there with Rainey, and we had Sarah Soderlin, and we went down there, and everybody's heard the stories about this, but we went down to the site below the fort where that concentration camp existed. And some of the stuff we got on recording, well, all I will say is this, you know, we had the spirit box going, broad daylight, we were hearing voices, we were hearing laughter, we were hearing crying, and at the same time, the last thing I asked, I said, "We're going to cut this off now." I said, "Does anybody have anything who was here at the fort during that time? Anything you'd like to share?" And they were like, or a male voice came through and said, "Remember us." Just like that. And so
couldn't have said it better myself. You know,
over here, Rainey, as long as we're going to very soon be getting out of here, but for the night.
Hey, Rainey.
Went to the
I
store,
basically
did
grew up
all
out
my
there, Scotty.
shopping, forgot the credit card.
Oh,
Forgot
seriously?
the card. It's sitting on my desk.
What'd you do? Leave it all there?
Hell yeah. I'm not going back.
She's been shopping for 2 hours at the grocery store.
Put it on layaway.
There it is.
I'm not putting it on layaway.
Just go get the card. Yeah. You going to go back and get it?
No, and they close. By the time I get
What's
back,
the matter
they'll be
with
closed.
you? You're not going to go back and get it?
Hell no. They can put my shit away.
Chapter 1 in my book, How to Make Our Wives Obedient to Our Every Word.
Listen,
you go
guys,
back and get that shit now.
No.
On that note, I'm going to head off, okay? Because it's
all right.
very
We're all
late.
going to head out pretty quick here.
Okay. So it was a pleasure talking to all of you, and I hope we can
Niall,
bring
good
this
to
up.
see you, brother.
Hope we can bring this up.
Love you, brother.
Thanks, man.
Ruben,
You have
we'll talk with the Knights Templar one of these days because I know a lot about that. So one of these days,
Templars. Give me
I want to respond to Professor Bauer about energy.
And Niall,
It's
are
a
you
pleasure,
leaving now,
Niall, as
by
always.
the way?
Thank you.
Are you out of here, Niall?
I'm out of here. Yeah.
Okay. It's what, 5 in the morning in Ireland, or
That's
6 in the
right, yeah.
morning? There you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
All
Well,
right.
Go get some sleep.
Great as always, Niall. Thank you.
Good night, Niall.
Okay, take care. Bye bye.
Yes, sir.
Bye bye. Bye bye.
So I just wanted to say in regards to Professor Bauer about energy, when the Christians came to Native America, they asked us, what's the name of your God?
Okay.
Which is pretty rude. What's the name of your God? And we said, Wakan Tanka. And they said, Great Spirit. And then when the anthropologists came to us and said, what's the name of your God? We said, Wakan Tanka, the same word. And they said, oh, the great mystery. And now when they come to us and ask us, what's the name of your God? We say, Wakan Tanka, the same word. But we say energy. Because energy is inside all of us. The wind, the rain, the storm, our body.
It's just a re-understanding of the same terminology. So
Energy, to me, energy is everything, and I think that the way, I don't know. So we were talking about on some chat or something about how science is having a hard time with explaining reality. And in fact, as we were talking earlier about consciousness is known as the hard question across any scientific discipline. There is no explanation for it. There's a whole bunch of theories and ideas and philosophies and personal perspective and just a boatload. All of it is speculation. Yeah. So when for me, when I started looking for answers to, or at least definitions to explain my experience, the first thing I looked for was the first thing I didn't know I was looking for and I resonated with was, is the concept based on just energy? Because if energy is what there is and consciousness creates that energy, then I'm that much closer to consciousness, or at least closer to having a more relevant and specific experience with this thing called consciousness.
There it is.
And on the way there, because if it is true to me, it makes it so simple. Consciousness is a nature of consciousness is energy. It is its habit, and it just expresses itself in a shitload of ways that we know about, and an infinite number of ways we don't.
Right.
I think this is where things like the concept of interdimensionality are probably the wrong way to explain a different frequency set in consciousness.
I love the fact that the professor out of Massachusetts who wrote the book Myth, Joseph Campbell, where he said, long ago, when the humans could speak to the animals, and we say that in Lakota as well, my language, but when we could communicate to those old legends and lore, we could, it would bring our consciousness to a level that was spiritual. When we heard these old Celtic, Irish, Scottish,
sure.
We learned these stories, and of course they're not meant to be taken literally, but metaphysically,
metaphorically, right?
Metaphorically, and so we could understand. We had to contemplate it. We had to think about it.
We had to have some kind of pattern recognition in the way that we think and we observe, and so we had to have some reference to this, to whatever this is. So that's how we learn. We get experience, which gives us a data set, and then we have another experience, which we can see that there are certain aspects of that it matches up with the other one, completely different on its own over here, and you build this matrix of patterns and references to your experiences that then give you knowledge. From that knowledge, you then, if you process the knowledge, you'll then gain understanding. And then once you start having understanding of something, you can now go to wisdom and then eventually to enlightenment. It seems like that's the way we function. And just in a regular, everyday, I'm conscious and awake mode.
Mm-hmm.
But at any time, which makes it one of the magical things of our experience, a bolt from the blue, you can go from not knowing shit to be totally wisdom and enlightened like that.
That's true.
Magic.
True. And that is magic, because the old people say at 26, I sat on the hill nude with the tobacco ties and a bowl of water and a bowl of minced meat for temptation, and I didn't sleep for 4 days, and I didn't eat for 4 days. And the old people say, the more you look out there, you look in here.
Right.
So nature is our foundation. What you're just saying, Professor.
Yeah.
That the more we look out there, and consciousness and cognitive of our whereabouts, we see ourselves within it. The other day, I was on my Zoom class teaching Lakota, and behind me in the window came a hummingbird, and it was flying around like a hummingbird does. And it was looking over my shoulder. And that to me was a sign of wisdom. It was just saying, remember us, we're here.
Right.
It's not this computer screen. It's not what you see every day. You're driving your car or whatever. It's touching your feet to the earth and drinking water and combing your hair, and slow but consistent. You're right. You're right.
And
when there's that one center of there's an experience. It's got different names: samadhi, nirvana, the prana and the chi that apparently represent the energy. When you can achieve that sense of one within, and then being one without in all that is, there's no difference, but there's distinction, but there's not difference, if that makes sense.
Sure it does.
Right? So there's that place of true self when you are one as you are one with one, which is the one. It is, and that's as simple as the experience is. You don't need theologies and belief systems and anything that has any kind of hierarchical or constrained or stepped or gated methodology to achieve that thing that all belief systems point to, which is being finally out there with wherever there is, with whatever who is that made whatever what is.
I am everything. I am nothing. I am everything.
And I am nothing.
I am nothing.
Yes.
And on that note, guys, we're going to leave this for tonight. Great conversation.
Thank
we
you,
could
gentlemen.
go on for hours.
Thank you.
We'd have to get some beers and pints. and sit around. But we will have another chance to do this every night this week. So, Chuck, thank you for coming in. This was
a pleasure to meet you.
Initiation by fire in a way. You kind of called in, and there you were. And there you sat. Thanks for sticking it out with us.
Thank you.
And Chuck, you have a good night. I'm going to let you go off the server here. So have a good night. Good to see you, brother. Talk to you soon. And Ruben, my Misu, my little brother, you have a good night. We will talk again very soon. And you have a good night. I'll talk to you later. All right. And Professor Bauer, same to you, brother. Always good to see you. Every point you make could lead into another hour of discussion. So I have to cut it off somewhere. We'll pick it up tomorrow night. I love your background, by the way.
Thank you. So, and, I felt a little starry-eyed tonight, so I thought I'd throw the eye in.
There it is.
Say, there you go.
There it is. Don't go floating off. Have a good night.
Take care.
See you, brother. All right, everybody. I want to thank you for being here. This was the Captain's Cabin. And, of course, this is not the main show, which ended at 10 o'clock Central Standard Time. But this is our after show. And I want to thank you all for participating, for being here, for sticking it out with us. Hope you enjoyed the conversation. And to let us out on a light mood, I'm going to put us out with, of course, what I like to do every time. And again, our Sunday morning show with Rainey and me. And this is our opener. We're going to use that for our outgo tonight. So, as always, live long and prosper.